Hello, and welcome back to Tangents on Cracked Spines with your host, Frankie. And the occasional interruptions from Maneki and Astra the cats. Mama Cat is in a coma, so remarks from her will be paused temporarily. Anyways, what do we do here? Well, I read books in the public domain, then go off on tangents about them. We are currently reading Dracula by Bram Stoker, and this is episode 13. So, if you're new here, maybe go back a few episodes to the first one. As always, listener discretion is advised, as just because things are in the public domain does not make them suitable for all audiences. In fact, it probably makes them less suitable, because they are significantly less PC, more violent, and uncensored. With that being said, where did we leave off? Well, Lucy, dear lovable Lucy, has found herself ill, with all the men in her life concerned for her and unsure what is happening to her. Her mom is currently out of the loop, but is also taken ill. And, Van Helsing has entered the picture. And has been quite cryptic and decided to go back to Amsterdam before coming back to England. And with that, we begin. Dr. Seward... Oh, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube and you don't like that I'm screen recording rather than showing you my lovely disheveled face, if enough people comment, I might actually go back to recording my readings in person as opposed to overlaying them on pictures. Anyways, Dr. Seward's diary. 4th September. Zoophagous patient still keeps up our interest in him. He had only one outburst, and that was yesterday at an unusual time. Just before the stroke of noon, he began to grow restless. The attendant knew the symptoms and at once summoned aid. Fortunately, the men came at a run and were just in time, for at the stroke of noon, he became so violent that it took all their strength to hold him. In about 5 minutes, however, he began to get more and more quiet, and finally sank into a sort of melancholy, in which state he has remained up to now. The attendant tells me that his screams whilst in the paroxysm were really appalling. I found my hands full when I got in, attending to some of the other patients who were frightened by him. Indeed, I can quite understand the effect, for the sounds disturbed even me, though I was some distance away. It is now after the dinner hour of the asylum, and as yet my patient sits in a corner brooding, with a dull, sullen, woe-begone look in his face, which seems rather to indicate than to show something directly. I cannot quite understand it. I'm sorry, I am doing a second recording today, and I need to get a drink, so pardon the ASMR. Later, another change in my patient. At 5 o'clock, I looked in on him and found him seemingly as happy and contented as he used to be. He was catching flies and eating them, and was keeping note of his capture by making nail marks on the edge of the door between the ridges of padding. Ugh. When he saw me, he came over and apologized for his bad conduct, and asked me in a very humble, cringing way to be led back to his own room and to have his notebook again. I thought it well to humor him, so he is back in his room with the window open. He has the sugar of his tea spread out on the windowsill and is reaping quite a harvest of flies. He is not now eating them, but putting them into a box, as of old, and is already examining the corners of his room to find a spider. I tried to get him to talk about the past few days, for any clue to his thoughts would be of immense help to me. But he would not rise. For a moment or two he looked very sad, and in a sort of faraway voice, as though saying it rather to himself than to me, all over, all over. He has deserted me. No hope for me now, unless I do it for myself. Then, suddenly turning to me in a resolute way, he said, Doctor, won't you be very good to me and let me have a little more sugar? I think it would be good for me. And the flies? I said. Yes, the flies like it too. And I like the flies. Therefore I like it. And there are people who know so little as to think that madmen do not argue. I procured him a double supply, and left him as happy a man as, I suppose, any in the world. I wish I could fathom his mind. Midnight. Another change in him. I had been to see Miss Westenra, whom I found much better, and had just returned, and was standing at our own gate looking at the sunset, when once more I heard him yelling. As his room is on this side of the house, I could hear it better than in the morning. It was a shock to me to turn from the wonderful smoky beauty of a sunset over London, with its lurid lights and inky shadows and all the marvellous tints that come on foul clouds, even as on foul water, and to realize all the grim sternness of my own cold stone building, with its wealth of breathing misery, and my own desolate heart to endure it all. I reached him just as the sun was going down, and from his window saw the red disk sink. As it sank, he became less and less frenzied, and just as it dipped, he slid from the hands that held him, an inert mass on the floor. It is wonderful, however, what intellectual recuperative power lunatics have. For within a few minutes he stood up quite calmly and looked around him. I signaled for the attendants not to hold him, for I was anxious to see what he would do. He went straight over to the window and brushed out the crumbs of sugar. Then he took his fly box and emptied it outside, and threw away the box. Then he shut the window, and, crossing over to me, sat down on his bed. All this surprised me, so I asked him, Are you not going to keep flies any more? No, he said. I am sick of all that rubbish. He certainly is a wonderfully interesting study. I wish I could get some glimpse of his mind, or of the cause of his sudden passion. Stop, there may be a clue after all. If we can find why today his paroxysms came on at high noon and at sunset, can it be that there is a malign influence of the sun at periods which affects certain natures, as at times the moon does others? We shall see. Telegram from Seward, London to Van Helsing, Amsterdam. 4th September. Patient still better today. Telegram from Seward, London to Van Helsing, Amsterdam. 5th September. Patient greatly improved. Good appetite, sleeps naturally, good spirits, color coming back. Telegram from Seward, London to Van Helsing, Amsterdam. 6th September. Terrible change for the worse. Come at once. Do not lose an hour. I hold over telegram to Homewood till have seen you. And with that, Chapter 10. Letter from Dr. Seward to the Honorable Arthur Homewood. 6th September. My dear Art, my news today is not so good. Lucy this morning had gone back a bit. There is, however, one good thing which has arisen from it. Mrs. Westenra was naturally anxious concerning Lucy, and has consulted me professionally about her. I took advantage of the opportunity, and told her that my old master, Van Helsing, the great specialist, was coming to stay with me, and that I would put her in his charge, conjointly with myself, so now we can come and go without alarming her unduly, for a shock to her would mean sudden death, and this, in Lucy's weak condition, might be disastrous to her. We are hedged in with difficulties, all of us, my poor old fellow, but please God, we shall come through them all right. If any need I shall write, so that, if you do not hear from me, take it for granted that I am simply waiting for news. In haste, yours ever, John Seward. John Seward's Diary. 7th September. The first thing Van Helsing said to me when we met at Liverpool Street was, "Have you said anything to our young friend, the lover of her?" And I haven't. There was even somebody from Germany who, I know Amsterdam is not in Germany, but they have similar accents, that came into my work the other day. And do you think I'm able to produce a decent accent? No. So, he's just going to sound a little weird. "No," I said. "I waited till I had seen you, as I said in my telegram. I wrote him a letter simply telling him that you were coming, as Miss Westenra was not so well, and that I should let him know if need be." Pause, because I need blankets. Okay. Sorry, it's getting cooler here, and I'm too stubborn to put the heat on yet, because it's only like 50s-ish. Once it hits freezing, I'll turn the heat on. Where was I? "Hi, Maneki." "Right, my friend," he said. "Quite right. Better he not know as yet. Perhaps he shall never know. I pray so. But if it need be needed, then he shall know all. And, my good friend John, let me caution you. You deal with the madmen. All men are mad, in some way or the other. And inasmuch as you deal discreetly with your madmen, so deal with God's madmen too. The rest of the world. You tell not your madmen what you do nor why you do it. You tell them not what you think. So you shall keep knowledge in its place, where it may rest, where it may gather its kind around it and breed. You and I shall keep as yet what we know here, and here." He touched me on the heart and on the forehead, and then touched himself the same way. "I have for myself thoughts at the present. Later, I shall unfold to you." "Why not now?" I asked. "It may do some good. We may arrive at some decision." He stopped and looked at me and said, "My friend John, when the corn is grown, even before it is ripened, while the milk of its mother earth is in him, and the sunshine has not yet begun to paint him with his gold, the husbandman," it does say husbandman, "he pulled the ear and rub him between his rough hands and blow away the green chaff and say to you, 'Look, he's good corn. He will make good crop when the time comes.'" I did not see the application and told him so. For reply, he reached over and took my ear in his hand and pulled it playfully, as he used long ago to do at lectures, and said, "The good husbandman will tell you so then because he knows, but not till then. But you do not find the good husbandman dig up his planted corn to see if it will grow. That is for the children who play at husbandry, and not for those who take it as of work of their life. See you now, friend John? I have sown my corn, and nature has her work to do in making it sprout, if he sprout at all. There's some promise, and I wait till the ear begins to swell." He broke off, for he evidently saw that I understood. "Sure." Then he went on, very gravely. "You were always a careful student, and your case book was ever more full than the rest. You were only student then. Now you are master, and I trust that good habit have not failed. I had a notebook full of doodles. Remember, my friend, that knowledge is stronger than memory, and we should not trust the weaker. Even if you have not kept the good practice, let me tell you that this case of our dear Miss is one that may be, mind, I say may be, of such interest to us and others, that all the rest may not make him kick the beam, as your people say. Kick the beam. Take then good note of it. Nothing is too small, I counsel you. Put down in record even your doubts and surmises. Hereafter it may be of interest to you to see how true you guess. We learn from failure, not from success. I mean, that's true. I want that to be quoted more, though. When I described Lucy's symptoms, the same as before, but infinitely more marked, he looked very grave, but said nothing. He took with him a bag in which there were many instruments and drugs. The ghastly paraphernalia of our beneficial trade, as he once called, in one of his lectures, the equipment of a professor of the healing craft. When we were shown in, Mrs. Westenra met us. She was alarmed, but not nearly so much as I expected to find her. Nature, in one of her beneficent moods. Beneficent? Doesn't look to be enough letters for that. Moods has ordained that even death has some antidote to its own terrors. Hence, in a case where any shock may prove fatal, matters are so ordered that, from some cause or other, the things not personal, even the terrible change in her daughter to whom she is so attached, do not seem to reach her. It is something like the way Dame Nature gathers round a foreign body an envelope of some insensitive tissue, which can protect from evil that which it would otherwise harm by contact. If this be an ordered selfishness, then we should pause before we condemn any one for the vice of egoism. For there may be deeper root for its cause than we have knowledge of. I used my knowledge of this phrase of spiritual pathology, and laid down a rule that she should not be present with Lucy, or think of her illness more than was absolutely required. She assented readily, so readily that I saw again the hand of nature fighting for her life. Van Helsing and I were shown up to Lucy's room. If I was shocked when I saw her yesterday, I was horrified when I saw her today. She was ghastly. Chalkily pale, the red seemed to have gone from her lips and gums, and the bones of her face stood out prominently. Her breathing was painful to see or hear. Van Helsing's face grew set as marble, and his eyebrows converged till they almost touched over his nose. Lucy lay motionless, and did not seem to have strength to speak, so for a while we were all silent. Then Van Helsing beckoned to me, and we went gently out of the room. The instant we had closed the door, he stepped quickly along the passage to the next door, which was open. Then he pulled me quickly in with him and closed the door. "My God," he said, "this is dreadful. There is no time to be lost. She will die for sheer want of blood to keep her heart's action as it should be. There must be transfusion of blood at once. Is it you or me?" "I am younger and stronger, Professor. It must be me." "Then get ready at once. I will bring up my bag. I am prepared." I went downstairs with him, and as we were going, there was a knock at the hall door. When we reached the hall, the maid had just opened the door, and Arthur was stepping quickly in. He rushed up to me, saying in an eager whisper, "Jack, I was so anxious. I read between the lines of your letter, and have been in an agony. My dad was better, so I ran down here to see for myself. Is not that gentleman Dr. Van Helsing?" I am so thankful to you, sir, for coming. When first the professor's eye had lit upon him, he had been angry at his interruption at such a time. But now, as he took in his stalwart proportions and recognized the strong young manhood which seemed to emanate from him, his eyes gleamed. Without a pause, he said to him gravely as he held out his hand, Sir, you have come just in time. You are the lover of our dear miss. She is bad, very, very bad. Nay, my child, do not go like that. For he suddenly grew pale and sat down in a chair, almost fainting. You are to help her. You can do more than any that live, and your courage is your best help. What can I do? Asked Arthur hoarsely. Tell me, and I shall do it. My life is hers, and I would give the last drop of blood in my body for her. The professor has a strongly humorous side, and I could, from old knowledge, detect a trace of its origin in his answer. My young sir, I do not ask so much as that. Not the last. What shall we do? There was fire in his eyes, and his open nostrils quivered with intent. Van Helsing slapped him on the shoulder. Come, he said. You are a man, and it is a man we want. You are better than me, better than my friend John. Arthur looked bewildered, and the professor went on by explaining in a kindly way. Young Miss is bad, very bad. She wants blood, and blood she must have or die. My friend John and I have consulted, and we are about to perform what we call transfusion of blood, to transfer from full veins of one to the empty veins which pine for him. John was to give his blood, as he is the more young and strong than me. Here Arthur took my hand and wrung it hard in silence. But now you are here. You are more good than us, old or young, who toil much in the world of thought. Our nerves are not so calm, and our blood not so bright than yours. Arthur turned to him and said, If you only knew how gladly I would die for her, you would understand. He stopped, with a sort of choke in his voice. Good boy, said Van Helsing. In the not so far off, you will be happy that you have done all for her you love. Come now and be silent. You shall kiss her once before it is done, and then you must go. And you must leave at my sign. Say no word to madam. You know how it is with her. There must be no shock. Any knowledge of this would be one. Come. We all went up to Lucy's room. Arthur, by direction, remained outside. Lucy turned her head and looked at us, but said nothing. She was not asleep, but she was simply too weak to make the effort. Her eyes spoke to us. That was all. Van Helsing took some things from his bag and laid them on a little table out of sight. Then he mixed a narcotic and, coming over to the bed, he said cheerily, Now, little miss, here is your medicine. Drink it off. Like a good child. See? I lift you so that to swallow is easy. Yes. She had made the effort with success. It astonished me how long the drug took to act. This, in fact, marked the extent of her weakness. The time seemed endless until sleep began to flicker in her eyelids. At last, however, the narcotic began to manifest its potency, and she fell into a deep sleep. When the professor was satisfied, he called Arthur into the room and bade him strip off his coat. Then he added, You may take that one little kiss while I bring over the table. Friend John, help to me. So neither of us looked whilst he bent over her. Yes, let's be modest for a chaste kiss. But we're going to readily transfer one blood from one living human to another. Because back in that time, you either had too much blood or not enough blood. And they didn't know anything much more about blood than that. There were ghosts in your blood. Because, what if they were different kinds of blood? Van Helsing, turning to me, said, He is so young and strong of blood, so pure that we need not defibrillate it. Then, with swiftness, but with absolute method, Van Helsing performed the operation. As the transfusion went on, something like life seemed to come back to poor Lucy's cheeks, and through Arthur's growing pallor, the joy of his face seemed absolutely to shine. After a bit, I began to grow anxious, for the loss of blood was tolling on Arthur, strong man as he was. It gave me an idea of what a terrible strain Lucy's system must have undergone, that what weakened Arthur only partially restored her. But the professor's face was set, and he stood, watch in hand, and with his eyes fixed, now on the patient, and now on Arthur. I could hear my own heartbeat. Presently he said in a soft voice, "Do not stir an instant. It is enough. You attend him. I will look to her." When all was over, I could see how much Arthur was weakened. I dressed the wound and took his arm to bring him away, when Van Helsing spoke without turning round. The man seems to have eyes in the back of his head. "The brave lover, I think, deserves another kiss, which he shall have presently." And, as he had now finished his operation, he adjusted the pillow to the patient's head. As he did so, the narrow black velvet band, which she always seemed to wear round her throat, buckled with an old diamond buckle which her lover had given her, was dragged up a little, and showed a red mark on her throat. Arthur did not notice it, but I could hear the deep hiss of indrawn breath, which is one of Van Helsing's ways of betraying emotion. He said nothing at the moment, but turned to me, saying, "Now take down our brave young lover, give him the port wine, and let him lie down a while. He must then go home and rest, sleep much, eat much, and that he may be recruited of what he has so given to his love. He must not stay here. Hold a moment. I may take it, sir, that you are anxious of result. Then bring it with you that in all ways the operation is successful. You have saved her life this time, and you can go home and rest in mind that all that can be is. I shall tell her all when she is well. She shall love you none the less for what you have done. Goodbye." When Arthur had gone, I went back to the room. Lucy was sleeping gently, but her breathing was stronger. I could see the counterpane move as her breast heaved. By the bedside sat Van Helsing, looking at her intently. The velvet band again covered the red mark. I asked the professor in a whisper, "What do you make of that mark on her throat?" "What do you make of it?" "I have not examined it yet," I answered, and then and there proceeded to loose the band. Just over the external jugular vein there were 2 punctures, not large, but not wholesome looking. There was no sign of disease, but the edges were white and worn-looking, as if by some titration. It at once occurred to me that this wound, or whatever it was, might be the means that manifest loss of blood. But I abandoned the idea as soon as formed, for such a thing could not be. The whole bed would have been drenched to a scarlet with the blood which the girl must have lost to leave such a pallor as she had before the transfusion. "Well," said Van Helsing. "Well," said I can make nothing of it." The professor stood up. "I must go back to Amsterdam tonight," he said. "There are books and things there which I want. You must remain here all the night, and you must not let your sights pass from her." "Shall I have a nurse?" I asked. "We are the best nurses, you and I." I did not think this set up correctly. I'm sorry for the amount of extra sounds you guys are having. "You keep watch all night. See that she is well fed, and that nothing disturbs her. You must not sleep all that night. Later on we can sleep, you and I. I shall be back as soon as possible, and then we may begin." "May begin?" I said. "What on earth do you mean?" "We shall see," he answered as he hurried out. He came back a moment later and put his head inside the door and said with a warning finger held up, "Remember, she is your charge. If you leave her, and harm befall her, you shall not sleep easy hereafter." And I know this is a short episode, but I think there we shall end for the night. Because I don't think my poor throat can handle much more, to be perfectly honest. By the way, we are a quarter of the way through the book at 13 episodes. Why is Dracula so long? Anyways, thank you all very much for listening. I hope to start doing longer episodes again shortly, but at the moment I'm just not up to it. But I wanted to continue doing the episodes. If for no other reason than I make sure my mom listens to them in her coma. So again, thank you very much for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, review. Like, subscribe, comment, review. Share with all your friends and strangers. It would be much appreciated. Because I do this for fun. It started out, I did it because my mom wanted me. Well, I wanted to do a podcast and she liked the idea, so. But I do it because it's fun and I like having a reason to make sure I'm reading more. All of the links to social medias, the email, ways to contact and reach out, and support are down in the bio or description. In the description. My apologies. I don't know why I'm yawning. Thank you and good night.